Hello, it's Pastor Penny. It is Thursday, June 25th, and I was going to talk to you about Isaiah. It's a really cool book, and there's a lot, it's big, there's a lot to it. But then I got interested, I got wrapped up, and this happens all the time, in prophets, because Isaiah is one of the main prophets, the major prophets in the Bible. So, a prophet is a spokesperson on God's behalf, and people needed them because they increased the credibility of the scriptures. One of the really cool things that I've always thought about the Bible is the prophecies in the Old Testament and how much later they come true in the New Testament. So if a prophet told people about what was going to happen, it gave people a chance to repent if they needed to turn back to God if they were not with God. And so that was one of the things prophets did. And before Christ came, they were the liaison between God and his people. Because he was like Christ, they were in a human form. There were women prophets too. And some of the main prophets were Abraham, Moses, Samuel, David, Elisha and Elijah, Jeremiah, John the Baptist, and of course, Jesus Christ. And so, and there, I think the number is 133 prophets, major and minor, in the Bible. And as I said, some are women. So that could be a whole series of talks. But I want to focus now on Isaiah, just because of time. We don't have time to do a whole lot of them. But here, Isaiah had a lot to say about the Messiah coming, and he wanted to let them know that the Messiah would bring them comfort and healing and peace. And so a couple of samples of the prophecies of Isaiah is one is Isaiah 7. Therefore, the Lord himself will give you a sign. The virgin will be with child and will give birth to a son, and will call him Emmanuel. Another one from Isaiah 9. For to us a child is born, to us a son is given, and the government will be on his shoulders, and he will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. You might recognize that as part of the Messiah. The music. Isaiah 53, he was despised and rejected by men, a man of sorrows and familiar with suffering. He was pierced for our transgressions. He was crushed for our iniquities. The punishment that brought us peace was upon him, and by his wounds we are healed. And a couple of there's a lot in Matthew that fulfills prophecies made in the Old Testament. One of them is, it talks about Judas agreeing to betray Jesus. So then one of the 12, the one called Judas Iscariot, went to the chief priests and asked, "What are you willing to give me if I hand him over to you?" And so they counted out for him 30 silver coins. And from then on, Judas watched for an opportunity to hand him over. Jesus, that is. Another one is that when Jesus predicts Peter's denial, you remember this? Then Jesus told them, "This very night you will all fall away on account of me, for it is written, I will strike the shepherd, and the sheep of the flock will be scattered. But after I have risen, I will go ahead of you into Galilee. And Peter says, even if all fall away on account of you, I never will. Remember Peter? And Jesus says, oh yeah, I tell you the truth. This very night before the rooster crows, you will disown me 3 times. And Peter declared, even if I have to die with you, I will never disown you. And all the other disciples said the same. And guess what? They all disowned him. They all left him when it was time for him to be taken away and crucified. And then 16 and 17. That might be all she wrote. Well, anyway, all through the New Testament, it tells about it tells about fulfilling prophecy, and it as it is written. I mean, isn't that incredible? Doesn't that kind of cement your belief or your faith that all these events were predicted by prophets way before they happened? So I think this is interesting. So Isaiah worked as a prophet for 58 years. That's like, it had to be most of his life. He had a wife and he had a couple of children. And he was very literate and perhaps the most quoted and most comprehensive of all the prophets. So a lot of us might have an image of prophets as being antisocial, as being really eccentric, half crazed from rejection and desert heat. So Isaiah wasn't that. He was a pretty straight shooter and not what you might think of as a storyteller, or a fortune teller rather. So that's a little bit about Isaiah and about how wonderful it is that we can know these prophecies and that they were made and fulfilled. Blessings.